So with that, we'll just start with a 1-minute, very quick introduction of who you are and why you're running. And we'll start over here with Mr. Marin.
Sure. I'm Gustavo Marin. I'm running for office. This is actually my first time as a political candidate. I've been involved in several community, business, and even campaigns, but this is my only time that I've done that. The reason why I'm doing it is because I feel that right now, Congress is dysfunctional. People are needed to actually set a number of policies right. Compromise is necessary. We have to address many of the issues that are actually not addressed because of polarization, such as economic development, the debt, the deficit, defense, and an array of other issues, including some very necessary ones like education and healthcare as well. I come from the university sector. I have worked in a number of universities in key executive positions. I'm going to take this off and put it here. Yeah. And basically, I have been a teacher. I have taught constitutional law at the college level. I have been involved in business. Right now, we have a small business.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you. I appreciate having the shot to introduce myself, talk to you a little bit about who I am, why I'm running, and most importantly, what I intend to do if I earn the privilege of representing this district. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. I came here when I was 7 with my mom. Like to share with folks some of my life experiences very early on because it helped form my values. We lived paycheck to paycheck. At the age of 13, I started working to help supplement my mom's income, and I also know firsthand what it's like to have a sick parent and unfortunately not have health coverage. And so these were some of the formative experiences that taught me a lot about how our families are struggling in the 26th district, but most importantly, we had opportunity, and I've been a great result of those opportunities. I was able to get a great education. I was able to, frankly, work my way through college at FIU and at the University of Miami, and I really believe that those life experiences have formed what I believe is our core values: opportunity, being able to have a fair shot, and frankly, everybody paying their fair share so we can all help one another make our way and achieve that American dream. So I'm running because I do believe that I'm living that American dream, and I'm frustrated to see that through lack of leadership by folks like Congressman Rivera and or frankly a misalignment with values that reflect our priorities as a country, Congressman Rivera's leadership has been lacking in being able to protect not only our seniors, but most importantly, move our country forward on how our youth are going to continue to have the same great opportunities that I know I have. Another formative experience is being able to see change happen. When my daughter was in kindergarten, I firsthand saw how overcrowded our public schools were, and I thought to myself, this is totally unacceptable, and what can we do about it? And that really led to just an amazing 2-year experience of building a coalition, keeping people at the table despite sometimes our differences of opinion about how we were going to accomplish the result of ensuring a great learning environment for our kids, but we were able to accomplish it through creative problem solving, bringing Kmart online that actually had been abandoned in our neighborhood. And these are some of the practical, innovative results that I know that I can drive in Washington when we see that we need to, number one, focus on job creation. How are we going to do that? Through strategic investments in infrastructure as well as bringing manufacturing back online. And as a small businesswoman, I will focus on ensuring that here in South Florida, where we are an economy of small business and entrepreneurs, that we're going to leverage that strength. And I will also, as a mom, focus on the strategic investments of education.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for the opportunity. I've met most of you in the past, except for you, and good luck at Duke. Why I'm running? Look, I was raised in this district. I went to school in this district. I've worked in this district, and I know it. And I've worked it for the last 4 years. And clearly, it's a place that I love. And this offers a unique opportunity, right? I think we're, when you see a candidate or a congressman like David Rivera, you ask yourself. I mean, your papers have themselves said he's unacceptable, right? And so you ask yourself a question: am I going to sit by and let this happen, or am I going to engage this battle? And you'll find I'm not someone who shrinks away. And the distinctions, I think, are clear here, right? I've got state experience, served on the Florida Public Service Commission for 6 years, where this paper and its stories talked about my consumer advocacy and work working for people, the lowest rate decrease in the history of Florida, or whether it be working in the Obama administration as one of the few who got approved by the Senate and got through that process quickly and effectively to represent the issues of small businesses, minority educational institutions, and making sure those folks were represented. So clearly, I've got an experience that I want to bring to bear in service for our country. But it is also a crucial time because I think this election is going to mark a distinction, right? Once this election is done, I think someone's going to get the picture that we have to work together. And clearly, Gustavo's right. The division that occurs in Congress is ridiculous. You know, when I hire a carpenter or a plumber or when I get my lawn man, I've never asked them if they're a conservative lawn man or a liberal lawn man. I just want the lawn to get done in an effective manner, be able to pay him fairly for his time and his effort, and make sure this work gets done. You know, the reality is, you know, I was a lawn man throughout this district. You know, my grandfather's arrived here in his late 60s, and so that was the only job available to him, and so I'd work with him. And the reality is, you know, his story is something that affects me in my view of why politics fails. Even though he was a great man, and when I was finishing high school, he said, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" On one of these weekends that I was working with him as a lawn man, and I said, "Well, abuelo, I'm going to go into politics." And his eyes welled up with tears. I'm thinking, "Oh, the old man is crying." He looked at me. He said, "Son, that's for the lowest people in the world." So a man with a fifth grade education who was working with his hands for a living into his 70s, thought low of politics. It explains why my father died at the shores of in this country, the greatest nation in the world, and not in his home country. And it requires each and every one of us to make a sacrifice. And clearly, those folks that are sitting with me up here, and I'm sure you who cover this realize what a tremendous sacrifice public service is. But it is also an opportunity to do great things.
Great. So a little bit about the district, and then Juan, you're going to kind of go into some of the questions. But I do want to get a sense of the district today, how it, through redistricting, how much it might have changed, and also as you're campaigning, what you're hearing in your district. Let's go with it's all going to be the economy and jobs, so we know that. But is there anything a little more specific about your district that would be different as far as their needs? And we'll kind of take turns who goes first. So this time you'll be going first.
Thank you so much. Well, I've been heartened to have just frankly a lot of one-on-one conversations from Key West to Westchester. And what I think I'm hearing firsthand from our voters is, number one, the extent of the frustration that they have with what they see as the gridlock in Congress. And so as they look at this next opportunity to vote for somebody, they're excited about, frankly, having a fresh perspective in Congress. They'd like to ensure that the folks that are going to represent them are trustworthy. And most importantly, they're looking to see how that person's values and life experiences, frankly, reflect the way they're going to prioritize what gets done in Congress going forward. So this district, the fact that it's frankly now evenly divided between registered Republicans and Democrats, is a unique opportunity as well to have the kind of political discourse that's not driven by per se entitlements by party affiliation, but really by, I think, engaging voters on what matters to them most. And what matters to them most is all about job creation. It is about strategic investments in education. And most importantly, how it is that we're going to protect our seniors, because we all have families that are struggling at both ends of this continuum. They're struggling to get their kids through school, and then they're struggling to make sure that they're caring for abuelo and abuela on the other end as well. And in between, they're seeing their wages fall. They're seeing lack of access to medical care that's affordable and that's quality. And so how will we lead in Washington in a way that brings people together, focuses on the results that we need to bring home, and frankly, get it done?
Okay.
You know, when you go through the district, obviously you try to meet with leaders, and one of the great advantages that I've had is my good relationship with the mayors of Florida City and Homestead, and we've spoken about these issues, but across that, right? So you meet with homeowners association, like the largest homeowner association in South Dade, which is the Kendall Federation of Homeowners, which endorsed me, and so when you sit with them, it depends where you are, right? So you look at the Florida Keys, what they're very concerned about is healthcare. It's a big issue. Even though there are not as many people not insured, they're worried about the access to healthcare. Many of them have to drive into the city because certain doctors won't take Medicare and Medicaid payments because they can't get the specialties they need in the Keys, and that's a central problem. They also have a central problem with water purity and cleanliness. They're seeing Florida Bay die. They're seeing the emissions and how that's not being taken care of, and they no longer have the money to fix those things or test them. But when you go into Kendall or Kendall Lakes and you look at the foreclosure issue, right? Mm-hmm. Listen, I'm I'm the first to tell you, and when I was running, I was clear on this and was attacked on it, that the president had to do what he had to do to save the banks. That was clear. But he also had to do something, which I don't think we've done enough of, is help people in their homes. You know, when you look at someone who bought a $450,000 house in 2008, and today stands in a house that's worth $250,000. But here's the horror, right? If he hasn't allowed it to go into foreclosure, if he hasn't stopped paying, if he's paying every month, he's still paying somewhere around 8 or 7%. He's getting no tangible. We can do it because interest rates have never been lower. You're talking about interest rates at 2 and 3% for homeowners, particularly people with good credit, but they can't get out of a house that they're upside down in. So I think the Congress needs to do something aggressive, because I don't think the executive has done enough, nor has the power to do it. And finally, I think it's education, right? You know, when we talk about where we stand as a country, with state budgets being cut and with them not having resources because there's not enough revenue coming in, you have to ask yourself the basic question, where's that money going to come from? And I think it can only come from one place, which is long-term investment in education. And that means helping fix our elementary and middle schools, but also investing long-term in university settings to make sure we train the people for the future. It's no longer enough to say I have a high school degree and make it in America. You've got to have a college degree. But that college degree has to be meaningful, and it has to be relevant. And let's not make a mistake. We still have the greatest college system in the world. People come from all around the world to come to our schools. But we have to keep investing in it. For every dollar we invest in education, we get $6 back. That's an area where I think, and I can feel, people are very worried, because having lost the valley, right? I know what it is to grow up in Westchester. I know what it is, my parents thinking about taking out a second mortgage on the house to be able to pay for me to go to the University of Miami. The reality is those parents no longer have that equity in the home, and they can't get a second mortgage. So we have to find a way to make it feasible for all of them.
Thank you.
Yes, I live in the district. I'm the only one who lives in the district. I've done it for 17 years. I not only have spoken to leaders, but I also, because I live in the district, I have the exchange with the neighbors, with the people of different areas, because I have worked in different parts of this district, and I have access to what they think and feel. I think I'm a little bit better qualified, because whatever there is pain, I feel the pain. Whatever there have been mortgage situations, I've been going through that as well. Whatever there is an issue of education, which my daughter goes to public school in the area, and so did my children as well. I think I am able to recognize exactly that, and perhaps that's really why I'm running. The reason why I'm running is because politics today is a total disconnection between the affairs of the people and whatever goes on in government. We have made 12,500 phone calls with our volunteers, and I have sat there. And I have also, as many of them have, I don't have the means that they have, but I do have the legs. I have the Lawton Childs approach, which is knocking at every door and finding out what they think, all right? And I think that good old politics, which is really your congressperson trying to find out firsthand what is it that makes you tick and what do you need for your district, because I'm also affected by that issue, is what really motivates and has motivated my campaign. I don't pay staff. I have volunteers. I haven't paid the art, any of the equipment, any of the advertising. It's been donated by people who support me. I do not accept money from the special interest, because when people talk about bringing the the bacon home, unfortunately very often the bacon doesn't go home. It goes into the hands of the people who have nothing to do with the district. I feel this is my first priority. I think, by the way, that what you hear from people is a total rejection of politics and politicians. And we need to really be very sincere and very serious of what is approaching in the United States in terms of voters' discontentment. Also of people who may not go to vote. We may have a democracy in which the majority of people opted not to do it. Another part of this district, and I think it's important that we know, is that it has 84,000, if not even a higher number of independent or NPAs.
Are they about 20% or more than that?
A little bit higher than that. You also have the equivalency. It depends on who counts, but there's a little bit more Republicans than Democrats, maybe not, but this is how you do it. But I think if you're going to win over Rivera, And I think that's the other approach here, because after all, this is a race. I didn't come here to criticize Rivera because Rivera doesn't have to be criticized. He's totally a corrupt politician that will end up where he should be ending up eventually if justice really works. But meanwhile...
Well, he hasn't been convicted of anything. I just
Absolutely.
want to make sure that that's
No, I
clear.
didn't say that. Justice really works. All right, justice hasn't worked at the state level apparently yet. I hope it does work at the federal level. But that's not my main try here. It isn't Rivera. It's the district. It's really having a voice for the people that you are representing. It's bringing perhaps the complexity of policy and the simplicity of the issues approaching individuals to make it work. What does it need in that area? Well, but by the way, I also sat in the United States Civil Rights Commission, in the Florida Advisory Commission. I brought the federal government to investigate the Tampa and the Miami civil disturbances. I worked in the Independent Review Board, which was suggested and accepted by the reverends of Pulse at the time. So we could work in a system where minorities at least had an opportunity to bring forth their issues and seek redress in this competent body. I found it, and I do what I often do. I left it because I think there are other more competent individuals very often, and I kept on working in other areas. But we have to address, of course, health. We have to address age discrimination. We have to address chronic unemployment in this district. We have to address immigration reform in the district. Just go up, you have the farm workers in the Florida City Homestead area, which they support me. Go to the areas of Florida City where you see significant unemployment, and go to the many other areas. And I think there's an array of issues that need to be interpreted and formulated into policy. What would I do while in Washington? I think because I am, and I have been able to be independent, which others can't not be independent, I think I will have a more powerful voice in bringing some type of reconciliation and ending a little bit of that polarization, understanding that we are living in a polarized environment, but still there are things that could be done in infrastructure, in job creation, in savings, and in healthcare.
Thank you.
I'd like each of you to tell me just very briefly what you do in private life. I mean, what is Nexus Homes, for example? We'll start with you and go to Joe.
Absolutely. You know, again, I've had just an amazing opportunity to get a great education through our public school system, working my way through college at FIU and the University of Miami. I was a property manager. I managed condos and homeowners associations, and I always kid with folks that think I'm just too nice to go to Washington. I remind them that after 10 years of managing condos in Florida, I can totally handle Washington. But nevertheless, I've had just great chances to not only work on the operational side of buildings, I've also been in real estate development, in land development, as well as high-rise development. And this last couple of years, I focused on an area that kind of came about because of a personal journey with caring for my own mom and looking for a quality, affordable assisted living residence for her that I knew would be in the community where she raised me, keep her close to her friends and to her church. And I found, unfortunately, sorely lacking market of that exact product. So what I ventured into is actually working with a group of investors to focus on really retooling what the assisted living market looks like in South Florida so that we could have, frankly, affordable opportunities for elders. And so the last couple of years has been about doing a lot of market research, doing a lot of due diligence, and figuring out what's the best way of buying the kind of either conversion opportunity properties that will allow us to keep the affordability pricing for our elderly and for our middle-class families that are struggling, frankly, to manage how to care for their elders in this next chapter of their life.
So Nexus Homes looks at potential opportunities for some type, for buying assisted living facilities?
Actually, we look at either converting them from currently uninhabited or abandoned properties and creating new facilities. We have identified high-quality operators in the communities where we'd like to work throughout Florida, and to the extent that the market is financially viable with the project, yes, we bring them on in order to be able to
Have you
create
started
impact.
has any been
Yeah,
opened
we have
yet?
a couple of deals in due diligence stages, but
Okay.
nothing's come to market yet.
Thank you.
Until recently, I was vice president for an engineering and architecture firm, and I did their development work. Presently, I'm simply a consultant and a lawyer. As my colleagues can tell you, running one of these campaigns takes an incredible amount of resources and time. Obviously, I went to school in South Florida. I was born here, and I attended Miami-Dade Community College. Then I attended University of Miami, and then I attended University of Miami Law. And through that, I've had the opportunity to run major nonprofits or work in nonprofits. And then I worked on the Florida Public Service Commission. I was appointed twice by Lawton Childs. Then I returned to South Florida, ran the Cuban American National Foundation, then did consulting work for a national group called NDN. From there, I went and did some work in the Obama administration and where I just started. So,
Okay.
if I could, I want to sort of say something, because you talked about geography, and I don't want it to be forgotten, because one of the great problems of this district is that it is a forgotten district, right? This is a district where, in the last census, before this census, what they did is they divided it up, right? They parceled it up in little chunks of it, and the reality is this is the southern part, but this is all the agricultural land in South Florida is in this district. And by the way, this is the most profitable agricultural land per acre in the state of Florida, right? Per acre, nowhere. And here's what's fascinating. It's not the richest soil. It's simply the most profitable business work done. This district also includes, the Florida Everglades, the single most important tourist resource in the state of Florida, right? Which is slowly dying and needs help. Clearly, it's something that I think is tremendously important, and sort of alluded to that in the Florida Bay issue. And it's one of the most diverse districts. This is a district that's 61% Hispanic, 17% African American, 21% Anglo, and then there's 1% there that is spread out. But the reality is that this is a unique place in Florida, and it is a place. It is the southernmost district of the United States, and it's something that people look to. When you look to Florida, you think about the Everglades, you think about the Florida Keys, and how this area is represented. That is why I think it's so important to take on David Rivera, because when David Rivera gets up on the Florida House, on the United States Congress, he not only speaks for David Rivera, he speaks for you, for me, for everybody who lives in South Florida. The good, the bad, the ugly is all mixed into him, and I just think that's a poor choice we have as Florida.
So the district lost, I guess, before we used to head west, more of Collier, right?
It didn't have the Florida Keys, and it went across Collier and picked up. By the way,
So it picked up Ileana Ross-Letton's old
It
district.
took the south of Ileana.
Keys.
Mario took the parts of Collier. But I will tell you this: Kendall and the Kendall area in Westchester.
That stays.
Some of the highest foreclosure rates in the nation. It's not number one. Number one is Fort Myers, and then number two is Vegas. But in this district are some of the largest foreclosure areas. And if you've had the opportunity, which I'm sure my colleagues have had, of walking around this district, there are areas of this district where every fifth house is in foreclosure or abandoned. And the impact that has, forget about the impact, let's not forget about the impact it has on the family, but the impact that it has on the tax base of that community, the impact that it has on the schools, the impact that it has on neighborhood property values, the impact that it has on those who keep
We can
a
come
job
back to that,
lost
because
time.
we asked about, Juan asked about what you're doing.
ZMG Group?
CGM Group is a company that started as a consulting company. We had the FIU Government Center as one of our clients, the Board of Trustees. We had a number of other nonprofits, and what we did is we developed either fundraising techniques and strategies, organized their board, sometimes recruited individuals, identified who or whom might be of most help to that. And also define what Gloria refers as values, because I think nonprofits must have a shared value in order to increase its vision and mission. The recession has come, and definitely we have had to choose a number of other alternatives, and what we do also now is we manage companies that wish to enter in the health field, in the vitamin, in the sort of marketing, sales, delivery, and recruitment into that. Within that, we also have a call center, which we use it for expanding sales and contacting clients, and we have used it now for the campaign as well. This is basically, but before that, I was one of the top administrators of CAU, Carlos Albizu University. I organized and started the foundation that actually began practically, the rule of thumb is you need to wait 6 years in order to mature. We did it in 2. We began raising $500,000 in events within 2 years. We developed other things. Carlos Albizu University is the #1 university in the United States that turns the most number of clinical psychologists and mental health specialists. I have also been involved in education for a significant number of years in my life, which, by the way, since we're throwing degrees here, let me do mine as well. And I also have great parents, and they really make me love the United States, and we really work in all those areas. And values were also created, as I'm doing it with my children as well. But basically, I specialize in Latin American studies from St. Francis College. I did a thesis on the Peruvian military revolution. I went to Hunter College of City University. I had my master's from there, also with a thesis. I also specialize in bilingual education, which I took on the side. And I have a law degree from Inter-American University in Puerto Rico, and I was fortunate enough to be educated in both types of laws as well, which has helped me significantly. Beyond that, I have traveled significantly. I led a U.S. delegation during the peace plan of 1982. Was a bipartisan delegation to Israel, Egypt, and Lebanon, parts of southern Lebanon as well. Gave me a terrific insight on the
We're never
politics.
going to get to the policy issues at this
All
rate.
right.
I mean,
Go ahead.
okay, thank you. Before we get into that, just briefly.
Right. Can I have some water?
Oh, certainly.
Anybody else would like some?
Sure. Thank you so much.
See, that's what Congress is.
Mr. Marquez.
The dialogue and gets the results.
I just wanted to ask briefly if you could, because there was a lot of reporting about the way sort of the Democratic Party went about getting a candidate or a favorite candidate, or choosing candidates, or telling other candidates to get out of this race. If each of you could comment briefly on that, whether you even think that matters. We'll start with you.
Thank you. I think for me personally, I've been looking at this race with a great deal of frustration. I had been, for the past 2.5 years, committing my time and talent on a volunteer basis to the board of Ruth's List Florida, whose mission is to promote democratic, progressive women running for political office throughout the state. And that experience, frankly, led me to 2 things. Number one, it dispelled a whole lot of misconceptions that women carry about what it means to lead in the political arena. And number 2, it showed me firsthand the impact that women make when we do come to the policy table, because we do have a different approach, frankly, to problem solving. We do have a different approach
Were you
to building
recruited by the
coalitions.
party? Did the party approach you?
So my focus, again, coming from that particular experience for the last 2.5 years, was that if I ran, I would run because I saw there was fundamentally a lack of leadership. So looking at how redistricting impacted the state's different races, I had been basically analyzing and looking at where there was a deficit of leadership. And this race came to my attention. And I had frankly gotten frustrated with seeing that Representative Garcia's campaign was not moving forward in a way that I felt, frankly, was going to be competitive against Representative Rivera. So I had begun thinking in my mind that I would maybe go ahead and run in 2014. And in conversations with various advisors, Betty Castor, Alex Sink, they encouraged me to rethink my time frame. They encouraged me to continue doing my due diligence in a more rapid manner because they had intuition, perhaps women's intuition, perhaps political intuition, that campaign was going to be coming to an end. And so, frankly, it all happened very quickly.
I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Democrat. So the reality is that this district is something that I was asked to run by key members of the party early on. The truth is we didn't know what the district looked like. Obviously, as someone who lives in South Florida, lives in Dade County, grew up in this district, went to school in this district, I've been looking at it for a while, and someone who knows the district and knows Mr. Rivera quite well, and so understood the voters and have been speaking to him probably continuously now for 4 years. So I was taking a look at it, and until they could draw the maps, I don't think anybody was certain. I have to tell you, Louis was given a horrible task, right? Louis was asked to run in this district. He was told to get in, which is unfortunately the way the Democratic Party likes to get its candidates, right? The more they get in, the more they play, the more that you win, right? We have a lottery system. They have a vertically integrated machine. And so the reality is it causes a much more fervent democratic process in the primary, and I think an expensive one. But, you know, I've been asked to get in. I waited because I just wasn't sure what this district was going to look like. And when you came down to it, the district came out to be an even district, which I think a much more interesting independent outlay than the previous district, which was, as you know, much more strongly Republican. There was a pickup here of Democrats by a good number.
The question is if the...
Your relationship with the party, were you recruited? Do you have any relationship with the leadership of the party?
I was one of the original founders of CALA, Cuban American Democratic Association, which became the largest group and actually operated in the very hard times of being a Democrat in South Florida. Still, we have over 400 members. That's the first time that Bill Nelson, he wasn't even a senator, and we developed a significant support for presidential candidates. I also worked at the Clinton election in the Hispanic committee of Dade County with a number of leaders and very interested citizens. No, I was not recruited by the party. I sometimes wonder if there is a party, quite frankly. I think it's amazing that in a state where the majority are Democrats, we have a governor who's a Republican, but governors that have been Republicans for 16 years. We have a legislature that is Republican significantly for a number of years. And who knows what we have in the Supreme Court. Sometimes I do wonder about their decisions. But and if you look at every city and county and so forth, I really think that if the Democratic Party had asked me to run, I would have turned it down because I think they make a number of very serious and erroneous decisions. I saw the campaign as follows, quite frankly. I did start it late, and you can see in a number of things. But the reason why is that I really felt that when Luis Garcia first started, at least, and he's been downgraded significantly. Mr. Garcia raised $200,000. He's a well-known person. He's the only Democratic legislator in the area. But it's this death wish that we have, that we ourselves must be some serious imported disease from the Mato Grosso jungles or something like that, that we have this automatic suicide always pulling it. But basically I saw the possibility, and a number of people from the district and outside of the district, friends of mine, who are members of this. We have Luis Diaz from Channel 17. We have Victoria Hernandez, the lobbyist of Miami-Dade. We have Ana Alejandra Cieresco, or Cieresco Alejandra, and a number of other people who sat down and felt that, quite frankly, we needed a change in this district. And we also needed to win in this district. When I analyzed the stats and the people who were running, or the people who are running, I sincerely felt that we were facing, and we will be facing, a repetition of the disastrous results of prior elections. I think that we have a strategy to win, and the strategy is that we have to appeal to independents, and we have to appeal to moderate Republicans.
Okay. Just very briefly, I wonder if the two of you would address the issue that you don't live in the district, Joe?
Well, look, I grew up there, went to college there. This district, nobody knew what it was going to look like when it was being drawn. I mean, so you're sort of left with that question, right? So I spent almost 20 years of my life in that district. So there's no way you can guess what the Florida legislature is going to do. At one point, the Florida Keys were in it. At one point, they went west across the county. What is clear, and what I want to state unequivocally, that if I am fortunate enough to be elected by the voters, I'm going to live in the district. And it's a matter of fact. I know it. I've been there. I've worked it. And clearly I have a great interest, if I've dedicated such a huge portion of my life to what happens in the district, living there and growing up there.
You know, I think first and foremost, beyond the fact that neither Mr. Garcia, Mr. Rivera, or I live in the district, voters are focused on two things. They're focused on who's going to be representative of their interests. What is their life experience that, frankly, bring to Washington to drive results? And so when I'm talking with voters, you know, about the fact that I grew up in the most formative time of my life, which is attending FIU right there at the Mitch May-Dee campus, the fact that I continue to mentor students at my alma mater, and that I see firsthand the struggles that they're having, not just with being able to reduce their time to graduation, which we've worked on very specifically within the College of Business targets, but also, frankly, ensuring that we have more access to our Miami-Dade County Public School students attending, whether it's technical college, whether it's Miami-Dade, or whether it's FIU. These are the core issues that our voters care about, not, frankly, where the geographic location of our home may be. And I intend, frankly, to bring my life experiences of working real hard, making sure we have opportunities for our families and for our youth, and that everybody gets a fair shot.
You live in Broward.
Yes.
You live in Miami Beach, so why didn't you run against, Ileana, is that her district? And why wouldn't you run against, whoever's up there? I mean, why? I mean, you've tried to make the explanation, but I do wonder, would you be moving? I mean, Joe says he'd be moving if you get elected.
I don't know what the future might hold. What I do know is, again, my guiding principle, if I ran, would be where I saw a deficit of leadership. And I don't see a deficit of leadership as sorely as what we see in District 26.
Let me be clear, man. I will live in the district. It's something that I don't have a problem. I've lived in the district in the last 4 years, and I would do it.
May I?
Very quickly.
Very quickly. When many of these people who are either butterflies or carpetbaggers lose, they leave. All right? And never again until the next election do we hear from them.
Okay.
I was asked to run against Lopez Cantera at one point, and I said no, because that's not the district where I live, and that's not what I really have. If we call it domicile, which is beyond residence, is where you want to be.
Okay.
I have one quick question, Ms. Rogers. I'm really left confused by your answer. I thought it was a yes or no question. Should you win this seat, will you be moving into the district?
I don't know what the future might hold, frankly. I believe I will be very focused on achieving the results that these residents wish to have. And if that entails me living in the district, then I will do whatever it takes to make sure that we have their interests represented in Washington.
Well, I'm just wondering, again, if we can keep it briefly. You've talked about in your questionnaire what committees you'd like to be assigned to. Tell me something that would be a priority for you, one issue, each one of you, starting with you, Mr. Martin.
I mentioned three, actually.
Just keep it to one, though, the top priority.
Yeah.
Top priority, I feel, is education. I think education needs to be reformed. We need to address, in fact, there is a reauthorization of ESSA right now under the Obama administration that actually tries to capture the accountability, the quality, the expansion, and the needs, and also applicable per each district and their needs as well. I think we have to have not only that people finish school and finish college, but we have to devote skills. And I feel that education is a partner in economic development. If we're going to survive as an economy and be the leaders of the world, we have to change it, and we have to adopt other models. We have to train people in STEM, which is science and technology and mathematics. I think that's important. We have to have every child, in fact, being brought up to capacity, so you have access, which is really what democracy is all about, access to the enjoyment of that freedom and that economic well-being. So basically that, and the same thing with the areas of higher education. Research has been ignored. In fact, right now there is the Research Partnership Act has been derailed by the extreme right in Congress. All right, and universities need to be part of that research in order to be the formative stage, one of the building blocks of economic development. We have to adopt models where other countries cannot simply take our economy and our people and transfer their industries out of here. And only through sophisticated, high-tech, new technology that could be done. Education will be the significant part of developing that, and having those 3 million jobs that Bill Clinton constantly speaks about that cannot be filled because we don't have the qualified personnel to do it. That's what we have to aim at.
Thank you. In addition to the Education and Workforce Committee, Transportation, Infrastructure, and I think Ethics, I really would focus on the Small Business Committee because, again, having worked for both small, mid, and large companies, I understand what it means to run a business, and I also have heard firsthand from our small business owners, which primarily make up the bulk of our regional economy, that there's significant barriers. And I think, again, going back to our values, if we are about a fair share and opportunity, it's wrong continuing to get tax credits, and yet we see that fundamentally the access to equity and or capital for our small business and mid-sized business owners is not available. And so I would fight, frankly, to bring that to the table, and I would also look at what are the underwriting standards that unfortunately are impacting and or acting as a barrier to our entrepreneurs to be able to grow their business. So when we look at how do we come out of this downturn, South Florida unfortunately has been struggling, and we need to continue to work very closely with partners like the One Community, One Goal initiative to diversify, but we have to acknowledge we are an economy of small businesses, and so that is where I would focus my time and talent, and more importantly, I know what it's like to frankly get people to the table, and not everybody necessarily agree on how we're going to get there, but we can absolutely build on our mutual interest, which is small and mid-sized businesses that has always driven our economy in the United States.
Look, I'm a big believer that we have a unique opportunity, and that's why I put down energy and commerce. We have a unique opportunity, right? With the cost of capital, what is that? We can really invest in infrastructure, long-term projects. When you can borrow money at 1%, this is when you invest in these long-term projects that benefit a state like Florida. You know, Floridians pay more for electricity than anyone else in the country. That's not saying that our rates are high, it's we just use more electricity than others. But why is it in Florida we don't have vast solar panels? In New Jersey, there are more solar panels than Florida. Ask yourself those questions. We have to open up the system so that we can create more opportunity here for alternative energies, so we can invest in highways, road projects, expand airports, water mains. Look at Dade County alone. The water department in Dade County has a $3 billion shortfall on infrastructure, and there is nowhere to get that money. The reality is we have to use this short-term capital. You know, look at the fleets, right? Go to any garage of any city, and you look at these fleets of trucks. Why are those trucks running on diesel when we could easily convert those engines and within 4 years have not only pay for the engine, but now have a more efficient engine, cleaner engines, and benefit the community? Well, because the cities can't borrow money because they don't have the tax structure in place to do it, and because no one makes that money available. The federal government can do that, and that's precisely what the federal government does. It uses its huge volume of power and its ability to borrow to maximize the ability of things that can't be done without them. You know, you look at the seaport, right? How we got the federal government working with the state government, working with the local government. We're going to be able to do a deep dredge. That would not be possible if all the branches of government. And that's, you know, it comes back to what I said at the beginning. It's about trying to work together with everybody in the sea.
I thought Obama administration really sort of didn't do much on the deep dredge until...
They coordinated the fast-through with the department, what is it
until
called?
the state put in the money.
No, the state put in the money, absolutely. But Obama, what they did is they coordinated the, the Army Corps of Engineers. They fast-tracked the permitting process, which is going to allow it to move much quicker, which I think is to the benefit of the state in particular, Miami. Remember, what we're all trying to do, and other ports are doing the same thing as we're doing, is they're trying to get ready for the post-Panamax boats.
I wanted to ask about the debt and just how to tackle this, because, I mean, you all are pretty similar in how you know, in your values as far as all the the Democrats, and you want to, invest in education, invest in energy, invest in small businesses. But all this investing also costs money, and we're now at record. I mean, it's you can't even envision what these trillions of dollars look like. So how do you think the Congress and the White House should be tackling this? And Juan, keep me abreast who goes next first.
Joe?
Joe?
First.
Okay.
Look, obviously, everybody has...
Is this a problem, or maybe you
Well,
think
I-
the debt, there's
let me
a
tell you
school
something.
of thought that says debt is not an issue if you keep investing.
I'm not going to go as far as Nobel Prize winning economist Krugman doesn't believe this is an issue at all.
Right.
Look, you always have to be frugal with your money. You always have to make smart investments. It's something you have to do. I did at the Public Service Commission when we reduced our size and our scope because our budget was cut, and yet kept the number of people, kept the right people in place, and had to let no one go. But at the same time, did more work for that and expanded markets and made our community or our state better. The reality is that debt is important, but also long-term investment is important, right? The surest way to die is that in a moment of crisis you cut back as opposed to invest in the right things so you can grow our country. That's why you need an infrastructure bank. That's why you need to invest in the right things. And if you look at the cost of capital today, when is it that you want to borrow money? It can't go any lower, right? Unless they actually pay us to hold their money. Money's cost will never go lower. So this is the moment that you use that leverage and use that to obviously grow what we want to do. But that means that folks that sit in the United States Congress are going to have to be making those right decisions. Not the decision to make more parts for a B-1 bomber, which is no longer effective for America, somewhere in some state so it buys a congressman's vote, but invest in the right things at the right place at the right time to make sure that we grow our economy, because that is how you get out of debt, is by growing the economy, growing jobs, and putting people to work. The more people that work, the more people that pay taxes, the more people that pay taxes, we pay down the debt. And I think that's where I think we've gotten into a crazy sphere. The last thing we should have been doing for the last 3 years is not passing legislation, not finding jobs for people, and having some kind of ideological argument against Keynesianism, which I think is beyond the pale. And in the end, the previous administration, when the Republicans were running it, has done exactly the same thing as Democrats in terms of deficit spending. What you want to do is make sure that deficit spending is not spent on an ill-advised war, because that's part of what the Republicans don't talk about. Where would our deficit be without that war? And then finally, I think we fail to understand what debt is. We have an important debt outside. There's no question we have to tackle that. But the reality is this is money we owe each other within the country. And
And China.
And Japan.
If you look at what that part of that debt is, it's infinitesimally small beyond what we owe within the borders of our country. And that's important. And if you compare America's balance sheet to any major corporation, I'd rather own America than that major corporation. We are doing well in many respects. Is our economy suffering? Absolutely. But it's suffering for lack of leadership, for lack of developing a national consensus, for moving forward on projects that we all know we need. Talk to any mayor of any small town, talk to any small business owner, talk to any large business owner. What we need is the country to move forward, have a clear vision, and begin to do the work that government does, which is that work. There's a great line that Elizabeth Warren uses that I think is, government is what we do together. And we've got to stop thinking about it's what they did and it's what I did. It's what we're all going to live with. And I think that's why I think it's tremendously important that we all get in this and make those right priority decisions in the long term on the debt.
Let's go this way for the answers next.
I think it comes back down to values-driven leadership. And so if we focus as a country on building a coalition that focuses on the core values we do agree on. We agree that we want to have everybody pay their fair share, and I think we do agree that we want to create a level playing field. And so using those values, let's focus on priorities to drive those. Number one, why don't we prioritize ending corporate welfare? The fact that we continue to give billions of dollars of tax credits to big pharmaceuticals and oil companies that frankly are the most profitable in our country is a wrong set of priorities. It's fundamentally misaligned. And think of what we could do, frankly, to reduce the deficit when we're not giving those things away. I think you would prioritize empowering the very folks that want to look out for our interests and ensure that folks are paying their fair share. So how about Medicare being able to negotiate pharmaceutical prices? I mean, why is it that the Veterans Administration is able to do it, and yet for some reason Medicare is not? like what we've seen under President Obama. I mean, the fact that we have a precedent-setting interagency agreements between the Department of Transportation, U.S. HUD, and the Department of Energy to create livable communities, and the fact that our very own region here has a 7-county, 50-year plan that is underway, being funded by
So how would
livable
this,
communities.
bring me back to the debt and how you would...
Interagency collaborations is creating the kind of, frankly, holistic and efficiency that allows us to drive our dollars further. So yes, it might cost a lot to have a lot of agencies overseeing the things that matter most to us in building community, but we can do so effectively, and interagency collaborations is the first step towards that. And I think the third piece here is we also have to make sure that people are paying their fair share. The Buffett rule, the fact that I personally pay a tax rate that I don't feel I'm covering my fair share. Why do I need to benefit from the Bush tax cuts? I think we need to have an honest adult conversation with folks about how we can pay down our deficit and everybody pay their fair share. I think the Buffett rule makes sense. Anybody over $1 million, frankly, should not be paying any less than the middle income taxpayer. I think the fact that we've got an opportunity here is fundamentally about values. It's about how do we have values-driven leadership that drives the priorities that our country, frankly, always has professed. We care for our elders, we ensure opportunity for our youth, and we want to give our families a good fighting chance to achieve the American dream, and that's what I would prioritize in Congress.
The debt.
Absolutely. Besides values, which we must share amongst each other to have an organized and democratic society, but I think we have to address the real problems. The real problem in the area of debt is what we have in Social Security, Medicare, interest on the debt, and the military. In fact, in the military, we have, of our discretionary budgetary spending, 51% of that is related to the military. So we need to address, as congressmen and women, those very same issues. What I will not do is I do not think that austerity is the right path, because England has experienced austerity and it's not working. Because austerity often means that you will have a no-growth economy. So what do I think we ought to be applying? And we don't have to really reinvent the wheels here. All right, you have President Obama and even the Republicans have had sort of a way of dealing with things through Senator Simpson's committee. And we have to, regardless of what we do or say, we have to come back to our senses as a nation. I think that right now, our spending is going out of control, eventually will hurt our growth and our GDP, but also we need to do it in a manner in which we have to...
So bring me back to the debt. How would you then deal with Social Security, Medicare, all of this? Are you good?
Well, to begin with, I think number one is in terms of Social Security and Medicare and many of those, there are strategies. In fact, AARP has proposed a number of strategies in the area of Social Security and Medicare, which actually prolongs and even gives more value and more money into the budget. It's in terms of raising the retirement age to 67 or 68. You have already gradations of savings in the budget into that. The idea of also addressing a little bit on the area of the cost of Medicare and medical insurance at all. We are the most spendful country in terms of health care, and unfortunately we are the least benefited by what we spend, whether it's in the public sector or in the private sector. So I think addressing the cost, but also addressing the expenses to the consumers and to the taxpayers need to be realigned there. The way we deal with the hospitals, doctors are being rewarded by increasing number of operations and expenses. And I think that's basically, but also the military. I think we have to really calibrate our...
Would you cut the defense budget? It's a simple question.
Yes, and it's being cut right now. The question right now that I think you want to ask me is how far would I go in terms of cutting the defense budget? I follow actually the studies and the logic of Secretary Gates. Secretary Gates is the person who began working on dealing with the budget and the military budget. There are areas there that are, in fact, you have a question there. How would I do it? Let me answer the question that you asked in there. I think we have to, yeah. Can I, or?
Yeah, we're pretty much, we've gone through an hour, believe it or not, so.
I think it's an area of policy, leaner military, get all the Cold War remnants that we have, and that's 22 programs right there of savings into that, dealing with intelligence, having a remodeling of weaponry, and in fact deal with a number of other expenses that we have. We even paid the State Department and certain agencies through the defense budget, although there have been reductions right now. But I think these are the issues that we need to address. Thank you.
Juan, did you have any more questions, or Nancy? Mark?
If you don't mind real quick, Mr. Roses, I think I got you. You're talking about you would support of the current situation, you would support just the Bush tax cuts and those earning, what, more than $250,000 expiring. That's correct.
Absolutely. I think that's a first step.
Mr. Garcia?
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor?
I would support expiring, but also changing into an investment tax cut in areas that are of economic need for the country in terms of job creation and expansion.
Are there any other tax cuts or increases that you would support?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there are several things here that you have to look at.
Well,
Yeah, well, why don't we start in the middle and then go around this way?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, we need to address the inequities that we are actually incentivizing companies to go abroad, to outsource. So that is a fundamental tax reform that we need to do, because frankly, that's going to bring jobs back into America, which obviously is a growth strategy for us in
I'm sorry to
manufacturing.
interrupt. You would give tax incentives then to companies to move back here, and you would
And I would
increase-
remove those incentives that are frankly leaving them offshore.
Do you have a dollar amount associated with that?
Yes.
Not at this point. I mean, I think there's plenty of folks that have done a lot of thinking on that, but I think also we need to reform how interest carried is taxed. The fact that we have private equity investors who take income as capital gains and not as ordinary income is another area
So you
where
think
we
carried
can
interest should
address.
be taxed like income?
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, tax increases or tax cuts that you would support?
Let me be specific, and then more so. First of all, in terms of industries being taken abroad, I think the number one exemption that we have to do away is the Reagan-era tax exemption that allows all these corporations to make deductions and move corporations abroad. That's
You'd agree
number
with
one.
Mrs. Romero-Roses on that, it sounds like.
If she said about tax exemptions on the Reagan era, yes, of course I would. Also in terms of tax exemptions, there's a number of things. There's $3 trillion of profits being parked outside of the United States by U.S. multinationals that are risking payment. The last time this was done, unfortunately, it was not done appropriately, and it didn't really benefit the economy. It went into dividends. I think what we need to do right now in terms of that is have that dialogue, but also create certain exemptions for them to come, all right? But also invest that in job creation strategies. And that's something that we can do.
Do you have a dollar figure associated with the revenue, either gained or lost?
Well, in terms of the corporate, that's $3 trillion you do annually. In terms of the, basically, I would do...
So $3 trillion, you're saying your plan, if it would be approved by Congress, would bring $3 trillion annually back into the state budget?
I would even do more. In terms of foreign assets, bringing broad, yes, that's $3 trillion. In terms of eliminating...
That's not the tax amount, that's just the assets that are
What's the actual
there.
dollar figure to the Treasury?
Well, you need to have agreed, but I would venture to say that if you want these folks to bring back their monies back to the United States, you have to have a very competitive tax rate, maybe 12%, maybe 13%.
Thank you. And Mr. Garcia?
So there's a multiplicity of things that have to be done. One is obviously create equities in the system. Look, some loopholes are important because what they do is they force money in areas that we need to do it, that we can't find public capital to do it. So that makes sense. There are things that are in the code, like giving subsidies to oil companies, which expired long ago and shouldn't be there. But we should put a lot more emphasis on, for example, companies that, and I think Gloria's right, companies that bring jobs back to the United States, we should give them a tax credit. We should also allow tax credits to be sold. Remember, a lot of times tax credits are based on the profit. When you have a profit, you can write them off. But what if we allowed small businesses to sell those tax credits on the open market so that they can get cash up front to continue to invest? Obviously these are costs to the deficit, but they stimulate the economy, which creates more revenue. So I think that they offset each other in the bigger picture.
It's very Republican of you.
I'm sorry?
It's very Republican of you thinking that tax cuts would actually increase revenue.
Well, no, they do when they produce more jobs, and the reality is that's what's clearly what they're not doing, which is when you create when you give large corporations tax breaks that already aren't paying their fair share, clearly what you're doing is losing revenue. But when you're taking jobs that are offshore and you put them in the United States, you create an advantage. Look what's happening in manufacturing. I remember Bill Clinton saying, manufacturing jobs will never be done in America, and yet Obama has created over 100,000 new manufacturing jobs in the United States. That's because we have the right incentive policy to bring those high-tech manufacturing here.
Sorry, and do you have a dollar figure associated with that?
No, I don't.
And where do you guys differ on policy?
Which,
Policy. I'm trying to figure out where you guys really differ. If you guys want to get back to me, you can, because I'm boring the editorial board.
Well, we asked that same question, but the answer was rather long, so I would say you go.
Okay.
Go for it.
Well, look, I'll tell you where I disagree. I mean, I believe that the middle class is being destroyed. I believe that working class people should receive.
Joe, I'm sorry. They all agree.
Well, no, but see, there's a difference. Life experience is a difference, right? I certainly have been endorsed by the unions of this community and clearly have a record of standing with workers. When I finish here, I'm going to go with SEIU, the largest union in South Florida. There's a rally. I've not been brought up on charges in the company I work for taking away a minimum wage from a worker or not offering health care. That's important. That's a value. And when you have a woman that has 3 children, is making minimum wage and asks for health care and can't get it and gets fired because of it, that's not right. And that is a place where we disagree and we have serious value differences.
I'm sorry I have to respond to that. I really believe that this race is about our fundamental values and life experiences, and to have my record mischaracterized, frankly, is kind of a cheap shot. But I think what is important here is that fundamentally my values, again, having known what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, knowing what it's like to not have health care insurance.
So why is it mischaracterized?
I value the fact that the mission of labor unions is to provide that for
Can you
families and
correct the
working
record?
families.
How do you
So
mischaracterize?
first and foremost, when I was employed by the Continental Group, my role was to ensure that employees had full access to their health insurance as well as their 401k plan. And what he is referring to occurred in an NLRB finding in 2004, before I was even employed by the company. So for Mr. Garcia to mischaracterize my personal involvement with the Continental Group in order to fulfill what he feels is his differentiation or his contrast with me, I think is wrong. We don't need to go there. But what I do want to emphasize here, first and foremost, is going forward, what voters care about most is the fact that we're going to be results-driven, that we're going to be true to our values, and that we're not going to, frankly, get mired in what I think is politicization and polarization that has not helped our country.
I don't have to bring... Sure.
Let me say, quite frankly, that these folks are fantastic people, and they all have great values. And I think it's a waste of our time and yours to be attacking each other, because our real adversary, not my enemy, my adversary is the Republican who holds office right now. Beyond that, I really think that it's a basis, and they have terrific life experiences as well. I think the voters of this district, if whomever they would choose on our side, will make a great judgment, or at least, let me be totally honest, much better than having Mr. Rivera, by all means. On the other hand, a lot of the choices made here are really moved. The unions never met I was never invited to a session. We had nothing to do. And a lot of what goes on in politics right now, and this is, I have received a PhD lesson on politics, on what not to do with politics, quite frankly. And it is all this, all the hiding, the backstabbing, not that I have not lived under backstabbing situations, significantly more, but it's a lot of why we're losing. All right? We have to calibrate our strategies. And if a party were to choose, you have to choose on the basis of who would be able to win the most in that particular district for an election. That's about it, but they're all fine people. I do not feel that this rancor ought to have, because this will damage the future once election takes place as well.
Let me just let me clear the air here, because I think it's important, right? I
30 seconds, please.
I don't have to show you. I mean, I've been hit by 5 pieces of literature. You mentioned it today. I mean, most of the stuff, the accusations that Ms. Romero makes, and those accusations are things that the Herald has already written about that are untrue. And so I'm reading Republican attacks from 2 and 4 years ago being rehashed by Democrats. I don't think it does us any good. I think what we need to do is talk about the issues we're going to do. I've known Gustavo for years, and I think Gustavo's an admirable guy. I've worked with him on some issues because he's been here in Dade County, and he's worked with me on issues that are related. And I think that's what's important. We have to work towards finding solutions, because this area needs help.
Thank you so much.